Hello, and welcome to another episode. Well, we're going to get into Game of Thrones, Season 6, Episode 1. Yes, it's back at last, Game of Thrones. Um, it's been a long wait, but it's finally here, thank God. First episode. Well, first episodes from a new season can be tough for a series. They can either be too weak, setting up everything. They can be perhaps too strong when you're not quite sure you've had a big break and you can't remember everything. This one has sort of hit halfway. It was a good, excellent episode. It was nice and steady, very strong. Everyone got their face in the camera, other than Bran. We don't see Bran, but I think he's back next week, episode 2. But everybody else got a show. But I don't know, I came out of it at the end thinking perhaps that was a downside. Rather than focusing on, say, 3 or 4 storylines, they basically said, okay, we've finished season 5 with Daenerys being taken by the Dothraki, and all these bad things happening with Jaime Lannister and Cersei Lannister's daughter being killed by the Dornish Sand Snakes, and it's like, well, what do we do with the first episode? I know we'll touch on everyone's storyline just to bring everyone up to speed. I can understand the logic behind that, and it does make sense, especially when you're dealing with a show that is only 10 episodes long. And this one was like 45 minutes long. With advert breaks, it made up to an hour. So that seems kind of short for a Game of Thrones episode. I remember back in the first season, I'm sure the episodes were like an hour and a half or something like that, and the seasons were still 10 episodes long. But the length of the episodes does seem to expand and contract without any sort of rhyme or reason to it. But anyway, yes, in this case they've chosen to touch on everyone's story just to bring everyone up to date. And we start where we left. Jon Snow being stabbed by his fellow compatriots up on the wall in Castle Black, the Night Watch. And the episode starts from lying in the snow where we left him. With Ghost, his dire hound, locked away, whining and crying, and the noise. Oh, spoilers. This is going to be a lot of spoilers in this. So if you haven't seen this episode yet, go and watch it and come back. Because I don't want to spoil. There's going to be a lot of spoilers. So anyway, his Ghost's wailing at the death of his master brings Sir Davos out of his room, and he finds Jon dead. And with a few loyalists, they take Jon's body to, I think it's a storeroom. It might have been Davos's room. You can't really tell. I think it's a storeroom. They take his body to the storeroom and they lock themselves in. So there's Sir Davos and there's about 4 or 5 of Jon's friends in the Night Watch, all locked away in this room. And they're wondering what to do. What do we do now? Will we be killed, by the rest of the Night Watch? And Melisandre, the Red Priestess, she turns up, and she's really taken a knock, because according to what she says in here, she saw in the flames, she saw Jon fighting at Winterfell. And to see him dead on the table seems to really knocked her faith. So what that means, exactly, we don't know. Jon doesn't come back to life in this episode. He's dead all the way through it. There's a lot of discussion about, is he going to come back or not? I think he is. How he's going to come back, I don't know. We have seen in previous Game of Thrones episodes that a Red Priest has brought back one of the men several times. And every time he brings him back, he loses a little bit of himself. Not the Red Priest, the guy he brings back loses a little bit more of his soul every single time. But for some reason, Melisandre doesn't decide to bring Jon back. Now, does that mean that her powers aren't the same as the Red Priest? It's possible. Perhaps she has the ability to see the future in the flames, whereas the Red Priest had the ability to bring people back from the dead. I don't know. I'm sure we'll find that out. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. One of Jon's friends, after Sir Davos suggests it, leaves Castle Black to go and, we assume, find the wildlings to come and help out. Because as Sir Davos says, the men in that room with him aren't the only ones who owe Jon Snow their lives. So we're assuming that this guy's gone off to get the Wildlings to come back to Castle Black to help out. That should be interesting. Probably that will happen next week. But that's pretty much it. The episode ends back at Castle Black with Melisandre in her room, looking very forlorn. And she takes off that necklace that she wears all the time with the red stone on it. And when she does, and the camera goes back to her, you see a woman who's like over 100 years old and is all saggy with long white hair. Definitely not the young attractive actress that you see when she's wearing the necklace. So the necklace is obviously very powerful and the centre of her power. And the episode ends with her going to bed in that form, the old form. But then we also touch. We go to King's Landing after we've seen Jon Snow's body in Sir Davos at Castle Black. Go to King's Landing to see Jaime Lannister arriving with Myrcella's body, and Cersei goes running down to the docks, all happy that her daughter's home, only to find out obviously she's dead, which is a huge blow to her, obviously. And you actually do feel sorry for her. I mean, Cersei's a bitch. I mean, let's face it. She's, is there any wonder Joffrey ended up the way he was? But, she's one of those characters, and there are a lot of them in Game of Thrones. One of those characters that you love to hate. And she has done some really terrible things. But in this episode, you really do sort of feel her pain. I mean, she's a mother. She's lost 2 of her kids already. Joffrey to poison, Myrcella to poison. And Jaime's there trying to placate her, trying to give her strength and saying, nobody else will do this to us. We're going to take back everything that we've lost and more. But that's going to be a hard one because they're surrounded by enemies. In King's Landing itself, you've got the Faith Militant led by the High Sparrow, Jonathan Pryce. And they're obviously at odds with the Lannisters. You've got the Tyrells, because obviously Marjorie Tyrell is still in prison with the High Sparrow. He's still got her locked away. And the Tyrells are a powerful family. And according to the map of Westeros, they lie south of King's Landing. Their realm, their kingdom, or whatever you want to call it, lies south of King's Landing, between Dorne and King's Landing. Now, the Dornish have obviously just killed Myrcella, or the Sand Snakes have just killed Myrcella. And you also see, when you go to Dorne, they assassinate Doran Martell, the king of Dorne. So now Dorne has lost its king. The Sand Snakes have killed Myrcella, who's a Lannister, obviously. And so, because basically the Sand Snakes were Oberyn Martell's daughters, and they want revenge for his death at the hands of the Lannisters. Doran Martell, Oberyn's brother, didn't want to go into war with the Lannisters because he was trying to keep his kingdom out of all of that. And so the Sand Snakes have assassinated him, and they're going after the Lannisters. Now, if they're now in control of Dorne and the Dornish armies, that means you've got the Tyrells, you've got the Dornish, all south of you, 2 very powerful fighting armies and kingdoms there coming for you, and you've got the Faith Militant in King's Landing with you. Not to mention, up north, you've got the Boltons, who have basically betrayed the Lannisters to go after their own power with the northern kingdoms, hoping to band them all together to face off against the Lannisters. So, the Lannisters are looking pretty hard pressed right now. They started off Game of Thrones. Most of the seasons of Game of Thrones, they've been powerful. They've been in charge of King's Landing. They've been the kings, and they've had all the power. But now it's looking quite dicey for them. So I don't know how long they're going to stay in power or what's going to happen. But they're mounting up their enemies, powerful enemies against them. So that's not good. Then we go over to Meereen, where you see Tyrion and Varys walking through Meereen, just looking around. Tyrion wants to get a handle on the people in the city he's now looking after. Now Daenerys has disappeared. They're trying to find out what's going on. And him and Varys are just wandering through the streets. You know, it's a bit odd because you would have thought that, considering what happened in the fighting pits, they could be assassinated at any time. But you know, nothing happens to them, and they happily walk on to the harbour, where you find that somebody or something has set all the ships in the harbour ablaze. Now, it could be the dragons. It could be the Sons of the Harpy that did it. Why would they do it? I mean, those ships were supposed to be there to take Daenerys' fighting force across the seas to the Seven Kingdoms to, you know, fight and get the Iron Throne. Surely they would want Daenerys and her people gone, which would leave them in a position of power, really, in Meereen. But that's pretty much all you see in Meereen. You don't see a lot else there. That's a very swift touch on Tyrion and Varys, and that's it. That's all you get. But then we go to the Dothraki Sea, where we last found Daenerys, just as the Dothraki turn up. And she is taken by them, and you see her in a long train of slaves, all bound up and tied up and chained, being taken off, probably to be sold at the Dothraki markets. And Daenerys is walking along beside these two Dothraki on horses, and she's got her hands bound before her. And they're talking in their own language, obviously, which she understands perfectly, although she doesn't let on, you know, about what they're going to do to her later and all that sort of thing. But then eventually they take her to Khal Morro, who is their boss, their leader. And she eventually confesses to him that she is the widow of Khal Drogo. And he tells her, well, in that case, we won't touch you. It's against our laws for anyone to touch the widow of a Khal. But she has to be taken off to go and live in Vaes Dothrak, which is where all the widows of the dead Khals go to live. I'm sure she won't like that very much, but that's pretty much where that ends. Now, will Daenerys let them do that to her? We don't know. I mean, I think in the trailer for Season 6 you do see her there. It's hard to tell, it's a very quick scene, but I think you do see her there. But also, you also see in the trailer the shadow of her dragon flying over the Dothraki. So does her dragon come to save her? We really don't know. I mean, once again, that's all you see in Daenerys. Daenerys is seeing. And then we go to Braavos, back to Braavos, where we left Arya Stark, who had been newly blinded at the end of Season 5 for taking revenge on that man who helped kill her family in the Red Wedding. And she's sitting there basically just outside of the base of these steps, just a beggar, you know, begging for coin. And the young girl who was in the temple with her when she was learning to become an assassin turns up with 2 fighting pikes, throws her one, and then starts beating the crap out of her. You know, obviously Arya can't fight back because she's blind and she isn't used to fighting blind yet. I'm assuming that this will be something that she learns, because as the girl finishes beating her up, she turns and walks away and says, "I'll see you tomorrow," leaving Arya lying there with her pike, with her fighting pike, all beaten up. So I'm assuming this is a learning curve, a very painful learning curve for Arya, where she will learn to use all of her other senses, other than her eyes, and become a really good assassin. And probably, almost definitely, get her sight back at some point. So, you know, we've got that to look forward to. But that's all you see of Arya. And then, as I say, at the end, it flashes back to the Wall, Castle Black, where Sir Alliser, who was obviously behind the betrayal of Jon Snow, is standing in front of all of the other Night Watch and basically saying, "I'm the one responsible for killing Jon Snow. I arranged it, but I did it for the good of the Black Watch, for the Night Watch. You know, he was going to destroy us. He'd let all the wildlings through. You know, that goes against all of our traditions, so I had to kill him, but I did it for you guys. and everyone's like standing there milling around, and they all seem to go with him at the end, which is a bit weird because Jon had a lot of friends in the Night Watch, but obviously most of them have decided to keep quiet. And then Alistair goes to the room where Sir Davos is locked away with Jon's body and his friends, and basically tells Sir Davos that unless he comes out by nightfall, which if he does, Sir Davos will be free to go, they're going to come in and kill them all. And that's Sir Davos quite politely and calmly says, "Oh, it's very nice of you to let me know, Sir Alistair. We'll talk about it and let you know our decision." So Alistair sort of turns and stomps off, probably a bit pissed off by that, which leaves, you know, Davos and Jon's friends in this room with Jon's direwolf ghost and hoping that the wildlings will turn up before nightfall. And then we go to Mary Sandra in the room, as I've already said, where she takes off a necklace and reveals that she's actually like 150 years old or something. But yeah, that's pretty much everything that happened in this episode. But as I say, as you can see from how I've been describing things, a couple of the characters get kind of shortchanged. You're only with them for like 5 minutes. And it's like bang, 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 scene after scene after scene. There are a couple of longer ones, 10-minute sort of scenes. But mostly it's like everyone gets a quick touch on base and then that's it. Move on. Now I don't know whether they're going to calm that down. I mean, this is a 10-episode series, as all the others have been. This is only episode 1. So I'm pretty sure Bran appears next week. So we've got his storyline to look into. I'm sure he'll get quite a lot of screen time. But going forward, I hope what they'll do is, as they've done previously, is take more time with certain characters. You know, I mean, it's they've got to start building up the characters again. The problem with Game of Thrones is because they're only, as I say, 10 episodes long, and then they've got a huge wait before the next series rolls around. So, you know, unless you watch the previous season sometime in the 9 or 10 months between seasons, by the time you get to your new one, you're going to have forgotten perhaps quite a bit of what happened previously. So they need to either make these more than 10 episodes long, or do more than one a year, or I don't know, spend more time with the characters. I don't know, but they need to give each character more meat to play with. Which reminds me, I forgot about Sansa Stark, Theon Greyjoy, who jumped off the walls of Winterfell at the end of season 5. They survived the jump, landed in a snowbank, no doubt, and are running away from Ramsay Bolton's hunters. He's sent out some hunters to find them with hunting dogs, hunting hounds, to bring them back. Now, Ramsay's dad, Roose Bolton, isn't happy that his son has let Sansa escape. He's also not happy that Ramsay was playing his little games with Sansa. As we saw, he raped her after his wedding to her in season 5. And Roose basically says to him, you know, if we don't get Sansa back, you've cost us the North Kingdom, because that's how we rally the North around our flag, by having Sansa on side, which is a Stark. And if you've lost her, then, you know, we don't stand a chance. But you see Sansa and Theon escaping through the snow-covered forest, and they think they've lost the hunters, and they take refuge by this fallen tree stump to try and, you know, warm up a bit. But before, they've only been there a few minutes when you hear the dogs and the horses, and all of a sudden you've got Ramsay's guys appear. And Theon tries to lead them away, but he doesn't do it in time before they arrive. And there's like 3 hunting hounds, and like there's 3 or 4 guys on horses, and they surround Theon and Sansa, and they're about to kill Theon when who should turn up but Brienne of Tarth, with Podrick by her side, riding to the rescue. So Brienne and Pod start taking on these soldiers, and they manage to. Brienne kills 2 of them, Pod kills 1, but then just as the 4th one is about to kill Podrick, Theon finds a sword and stabs the guy through the chest. So good for Theon. He's coming back to himself now. he seems to be thrown off this Reap persona that Ramsay has made him live with, and he seems to be coming back to himself now thanks to Sansa. But the dogs. My one big problem with this episode, the 3 hunting hounds that are there when they find Theon and Sansa, as soon as Brienne and Pod turn up, the dogs disappear. They kill all the bad guys, but the dogs have gone. There's no howling, there's no killing of the dogs. They've just vanished. Now these are Ramsay hunting hounds. Now you've got to think that Ramsay isn't going to train up dogs who are going to run away at the first sign of a fight. And there's 3 of them. So where did they go? The show doesn't often make huge gaping holes like that in plots, but this is one that you sort of like, you can't miss it. You could drive a truck through it. So that's a little bit annoying, but hey, what makes up for it is that Brienne gets to swear her oath of loyalty to Sansa. So he kneels before Sansa, lowers her sword into the snow, and says her part of the oath. And Sansa can't remember what words. She remembers the beginning of it, but then Podrick has to kind of egg her along about the rest of the words of the oath. But it's a very good scene. It's nice to see Brienne get what she needs, because Brienne is one of those characters who needs to serve someone, and she needs to serve someone who's righteous and honourable, because that's what she is. And I'm hoping that Sansa is going to use her in the best way. I hope that Sansa's got rid of the whiny, bitchy girl that she was in the first few seasons, and is now coming into herself, into her own. And she's going to be a stronger, more honourable character like her mother and her father. Especially now Brienne has sworn her oath of loyalty to her. So we'll see what happens with her. They're either going to go... Theon says that they should go north to Castle Black, because as far as they know, that's where Jon is, and Jon's in charge of Castle Black, but they don't know he's been dead, he's been killed. It's possible Theon might take them to the Iron Islands, where his people come from. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. But yeah, so that's pretty much the entire first episode of Game of Thrones. Like I say, very steady, had some really great bits in it. A couple of good fights. And now we wait and see. It's set up a lot of stuff. As I say, the Lannisters are really in it hard now, because they've got enemies all around, and powerful enemies. So war is coming to the Lannisters. But what's going to happen in the north? If the north sides with Sansa, if they can get the Night's Watch, maybe the Wildlings, and most of the northern kingdoms to rally around Sansa, the Boltons are dead. But then we've seen in the trailer that the Iron Islands, where Theon comes from, they've got a major part in this series, in this season as well. So do they join with the North Kingdoms? Do they fight the North Kingdoms? According to the books, they've done that before, and that's what they do in the books. But this season is going away from the books. So it's all fresh and new, and we don't know what's going to happen. So it's all very, very interesting, and it's fun to think about what could happen next. But that's about it. So I will see you. I'll review the second episode when we get it next Monday. But for now, that's it. That's Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 1. Hope you enjoy it. And I'll see you next time. Take care.